Welcome to Finding Certainty with your host and U.S. Army veteran, Patrick Laing. Over the next hour, you'll learn from Patrick and his expert guests how to attract more certainty into your business and your life. Now, here is your host, Patrick Laing.
Welcome to Finding Certainty. This is Patrick Laing. I'm meeting with a special guest today, Mr. Dave Bray. He's an award-winning musician with over a decade of touring experience, 6 studio albums, and millions of streams and views across all platforms. Looking forward to meeting you and getting to know you a little bit today, Dave, and talking about your story and how through your experience you are not only inspiring people, but maybe creating a little more certainty in their lives as well. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Patrick. I appreciate you and your team offering me the spot. So thanks again. I appreciate the intro.
Absolutely. Well, it's not every day we have an artist who's toured with the likes of rock legends Aerosmith and Lynyrd Skynyrd and Weezer and heck, Charlie Daniels Band. I mean, the list goes on, right? You have performed. Sorry, yeah. Go ahead.
No, I said it's definitely an eclectic group of people that I've performed with and shared the stage with for sure. So I'm still trying to figure out what genre I am.
Well, I think it's really cool, and we'll talk about it a little bit on the show today. How you cover many genres, right? You've performed with a wide variety of artists. You performed at NFL and NHL and the Special Olympics and the et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's got to be quite the experience. I'm sure as you look back over your career over the last decade or more, a lot of memories, right? A lot of people you've touched and a lot of experiences that you've collected.
There is, one of the most interesting groups for me. I mean, a lot of them have, I don't want to say come and gone, but again, when you're dealing with like country, fans, or you're dealing with rock fans, or you're dealing with like some of the metal guys, or you just any of them, one of my favorite groups of people I found is the law enforcement community out there. They've just embraced all aspects of what I do. I did a hip hop a song with a guy who's he's actually a hip hop artist, but he's actually a law enforcement officer as well. And so, yeah, I've just, like I said, my genre and net is casted wide. But the law enforcement community just has embraced what I do because I feel like they understand the mission the best.
Well, I would agree. That doesn't surprise me. You're a Marine Corps and U.S. Navy veteran yourself. As you know, I served in the Army. And anyone who served, I think there's definitely this camaraderie and this sense of community. A lot of people I don't think can quite relate to that if they haven't been in the military before. I mean, we hear all the time, thank you for your service. And I think people appreciate it, most people at least, but they don't, or they can't truly understand it. Whether you've served in the military or served in law enforcement, it's a very unique experience, isn't it?
Absolutely. And of course, in service, it's not just wearing a uniform. There's so many different elements, there's so many different groups of people that are doing totally different things. We've often heard, I served in Afghanistan. Well, there's people that served, you were at a FOB in Afghanistan, maybe saw or heard a rocket, but then you got, team guys, Navy SEAL guys that are out there for 3 or 4 ops, sometimes a day, and working through buildings all day and night, 8 hours a day. And I think that's, as far as the military, is concerned, that there's obviously that element of service, but law enforcement, I feel like that line gets even more and more narrow because every single day they go out on the job, every single day they go out and work, and they put on a badge, they put on a uniform. And one of my missions is, again, to help to humanize those men and women who are brave enough to do that here on our home soil.
100%. So if you're listening to our show today, and maybe you're here for the first time, maybe you're a repeat offender, as I say, we appreciate your patronage. If you're not familiar with Dave Bray is as I said, award-winning artist. He's performed all over the country and overseas as well. It's my understanding, Dave. And really, your rock rendition of the Star Spangled Banner is maybe what you're best known for. It's certified gold. It's had millions of streams or millions of views, right? 1.5 million streams. And I think it's one of the most popular versions of the song worldwide.
Probably. Yeah. And that was definitely the groundbreaker for me as an artist, as well as the band I was with back then. Again, I'm just a solo artist now, Dave Bray USA, and the social media circus out there. But I found something with that song that it resonated with people of all ages. Music has that ability. The right song can do that. And for it to be, I don't think this is registered in the Guinness Book of World Records, but it's one of the oldest cover tunes that a rock band has ever done. So you take a song that was written 200 years ago and do a cover, some ears are certainly going to poke up. And for that song to be a rock song, and to keep the reverence and the meaning behind it, that was the most important part of the writing process for me, was to, how do I make this song rock? How do I inspire the spirit and use rock music to do that? But also, how do I maintain the genuine reverence behind it so that people aren't offended? So again, we have to remember we're a nation built on defiance. You know what I mean? Every founding document that we have is part of that defiance against tyranny and oppression, and the king at the time in England. And I just wanted to reawaken that spirit with that song. I think it does it. I think it does it well, and that Star Spangled Banner rocks like no other.
Totally does. The first time I heard it, I listened to it about 6 times in a row. I was so impressed. I had a friend of mine who's followed you for a long time who introduced it to us. My business partner and I are organizing a freedom festival for next year here in Las Vegas. We reached out to you about possibly being a part of that if the schedule allows, but we were very impressed. And I'm curious to know the story behind this song. But first, let's talk a little bit about you. Let's get into your background. Where'd you grow up, and maybe a little bit about your family. I know you're married to Becky, is my understanding, right?
Beautiful wife, two teenage boys. We're going through the rigors of being parents of teens, which is interesting. Blessed to have these 2 boys. They're absolutely amazing students. Their teachers love them. My wife is, again, part of our team. She does the booking, the outreach, and logistics, and the PR for Dave Bray USA, for the band, as well as the solo artist, which is me. And, my grow up, I came up in small town America, and I don't know anyone who really grew up in a smaller town, but Jefferson, Pennsylvania is a tiny, tiny, tiny dot on the map, about 300-400 when I was there. We didn't have any traffic lights. We had a roundabout, and it was optional stop signs at every stop sign. So that's just how we grew up. No double lane roads. It was just
Wow.
us in the community. Yeah, very small town. 1 cop, 1 fire department, volunteer fire department was the backup police and everything else. So that was us. Small.
Incredible.
Okay.
I used to think that volunteer, firemen or fire women even, I think I used to think that was a thing of the past, but in the small towns, it's very much alive and well, right? Yep. That's all they have.
Sure.
A lot of the time, and one truck maybe, and
one truck, fire police. You got the fire police. They do it all. So they help out with the law enforcement. I'm sure it's changed a little since I've been there. But yeah, we had 4 different denominations of churches on each side of the roundabout, and you picked one and you went, and just a beautiful area. We grew up in a time capsule, and I go back to speak with my friends about it all the time, and they're like, how blessed were we to really grow up in that era where, we were on, it was the early 80s, and we were just sort of out there on our own and exploring on our own and doing what we wanted as kids. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful time.
Yeah, I'm envious. I just grew up in a regular suburb, and I always thought I would enjoy it because I love fishing. I enjoy hunting. I'm an outdoors guy, but I'm not a country, I didn't grow up in the country, right? My wife is a daughter of a dairy farmer. I always say I married the farmer's daughter, oldest of 10 children.
You're getting into a country song here, buddy. What you got to watch yourself. Daughter
That's
of a
right.
dairy farmer.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
maybe we can co-author something. No, but yeah, she had such an idyllic childhood, right? Going down on the creek and fishing, and animals and the farm. I mean, it's hard work, right? Dairy farm, you're working 24/7, it seems. But not only does she have such great memories as a child, kind of an idyllic childhood, but her family is amazing, right? They've grown up to be just really solid citizens and parents and church members. I mean, they're just incredible. I believe growing up on a farm, growing up in a small town like that has a lot to do with that.
I agree.
Would you agree?
100. And I think that comes from a certain reliance. Having to rely on, needing your kids to help you do the daily work around the farm helps you respect your children and value your children way more. And the same thing with, our family is not on the farm. I grew up in produce farming. So it was cutting cabbage, pulling tomatoes during the high sun time, and then back to cutting cabbage and kale at night. So it's tedious and hard work. But when families rely on one another to bring home the bread and bring home the bacon, so to speak, or to help in that process. Just like, again, my family, I have 2 teenage boys. I own a print shop that we do all our own merchandising in. So we print our own hats, T-shirts, and all these things, and they help out with those things. They help out with the inventory. They help out with the printing. They'll help out with all that stuff. My wife, who does all the booking and the PR and the outreach, I depended on those people in my life that live under my roof to help with the amount of weight that it takes to put on, our little business. And it's just a small business, but it's productive. And it's interesting because, again, I'm not bossing my kids around. I ask them to do things. We rely on each other. They count on me for what I do, and I count on them for what they do. And that reliance leads to, a tighter bond. And I feel like, America, nobody relies. Dad goes to work at his job. Mom goes to work at their job. The kids both go to separate schools. Nobody's counting on each other really that much. I mean, there's obviously the mainstays, but for the actual bread and butter of what is going to, keep the heat on, keep the food on the table, and keep the lights on, everybody's going to something else for that instead of looking towards each other to build. So I think families need to face each other and build something together, even if it's just a hobby or a side hustle.
Right. I completely agree. You make an interesting point. I guess I'd never thought of, maybe I've done it without realizing it, but you talked about how the parents respect the children. They rely on the children and vice versa. Growing up in a farm or in a family business or, with that correct nucleus. Mm-hmm. You always hear about people who grew up in a farm, for example, having a good work ethic and they respect their elders and so forth and so on. But that respect and that reliance has to go both ways, right? I've been fortunate. I had 4 teenagers at once. We have 5 children. I married a widow with 3 kids, and we have 2 boys together. And then, and now they're 17 to 25, right? They've done well. We've got a couple of academics who both got scholarships and a couple of athletes who are both Division I athletes. My daughter was a gymnast for the Oregon Ducks. My son's a diver for Cal State. And I think by default, one of the reasons they've done well is that we gave them that respect. We gave them that autonomy, right? We forced them to be independent, to be proactive, right? To create work ethic. And I think in that sense, I guess I hadn't really thought about it, but we really were respecting them to be capable of that, right? To be worthy of it, or maybe we raised the standard and they rose to it, right?
That's a good way to put it. Yep.
Yeah. Sounds like your boys are doing really well. We were talking about trying to figure out where they're going to go for college, and before the show, that's a big decision.
That's a minefield out there right now,
Oh my gosh, yeah. We before the show, we were talking a little bit about Liberty University. I was able to attend a summit there. It's a CEO summit that we've been to the last 2 years, my business partners and me. And I'll tell you, if you're considering it, I was very, very impressed. Not just with the spirit there and the quality of the instruction, the quality of the campus, but more than anything, I think I was impressed with the kids.
Yep.
I mean, the students are phenomenal. Wishing my kids had gone there,
right?
But
That's what I noticed when I was there too. I was there with, I think we mentioned with the Save America tour, and we got to interview some of the kids, and just their ability to articulate, and again, just you could almost see the respect for one another. And I think I'll go into that, and then maybe the next segment we'll talk about respect a little more. But you could it was almost tangible, and it made you want to act even as a better way as an adult when you're around these kids who actually acted just unbelievably respectful towards anyone and everyone around them. It was beautiful. I love that campus.
Yeah, it was. I guess one thing that struck me is they weren't just the blind following the blind, right? It wasn't blind faith. It wasn't, we're just doing what we're told to do. This is how we were raised. I mean, these kids are thinkers, right? They ask questions. They're reaching out. We were obviously working with the business school, specifically with Dave Bratt, the dean there, but these kids are smart, and they have values, and they really seem to want to make the world a different place, a better place, in a number of different ways. We had a summit, kind of a breakout session with the producers of The Chosen, and there were a lot of kids in there who were interested in going into film and using that medium to spread the good news, spread the word. And there were a lot of kids looking into different types of business and different types of performance, like yourself. And I'm a firm believer, and we are coming up against our first break, but I'm a firm believer that we can find our lane, find our passion, and do good with that passion wherever we go. However we end up creating our life and finding that lane, we can do more than just make income, but we can make a difference. And you are most definitely doing that, my friend, which
thank you.
One of the reasons I invited you on the show. So
well, very cool. And yeah, sometimes God doesn't tell you that what he's building you for is to do good while you're in the middle of learning. That's the interesting part, is while he's constructing the cabinet, you gotta stand back and allow him to do that and give him the space. So yeah, man, I love it. And I know, again, I know we're up against the break here, but I just want to say again, the faith and the respect that I saw from those kids at Liberty was definitely something. It was such a fresh breath of air. You just don't see it in the world today, especially from kids in that demographic, 18 to 20. It's just not there.
Very much so. Well, they call it the buckle of the Bible Belt for a reason, right?
That's right.
They seem to be doing some things right. But we're visiting with Dave Bray. He's a successful musician, well known for his performance of the Star Spangled Banner. Wish we could have you perform on the show today, but we'll most definitely put a link to it in the description below. So if you're listening, go back later and read and click on the link and spread the word. Like it, share it. We'll be right back.
Follow Voice America at facebook.com/Voice America for juicy updates from your favorite radio shows and podcasts.
Certainty Management can help create more certainty in your life with our deep discount health insurance options, even for 1099s, part-time employees, volunteers, and more. Pay less to protect yourself, your loved ones, and your team. Call 888-684-3122 for a free quote today. That's 888-684-3122. Visit us on the web at CertaintyTeam.com. That's Certainty, TEAM, like Mary.com.
Voice America programs are now available on your favorite connected device, including Amazon, Alexa, and Google Home. Through streams with Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, and iHeartRadio, listening to your favorite show is as easy as saying the show name followed by the word podcast.
Hey, Alexa, play Finding Your Frequency podcast.
If that doesn't work, try adding on TuneIn or on iHeartRadio or on Apple Podcasts.
If you're a nonprofit in need of funding, we can help. Certainty Management is a cost reduction firm that also helps churches, schools, sports teams, and other nonprofits raise unlimited zero-cost funding. Best of all, you don't have to sell anything or ask for donations. Call 888-684-3122 to learn more today. That's 888-684-3122. Visit us on the web at CertaintyTeam.com. That's Certainty, TEAM, like Mary.com.
When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network.
You are listening to Finding Certainty with Patrick Laing. Have a question for Patrick or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show with Patrick.
Welcome back to Finding Certainty. This is Patrick Laing, your host. I'm visiting with Dave Bray today. He's and I would say an eclectic musician. I mean, you are a rock musician, Dave, but you've played with so many different bands and in so many different arenas. It must be quite the experience going from country to rock to heavy metal to even,
hip hop
and everything in between, right? It's not only is it a variety and a diversity of styles, right? But a lot of different groups, a lot of different types of performers and communities and so forth and so on. And that resonates to me because I believe one of the best ways to create more certainty in our lives is to work together. We were talking about the show before when I was asked to do the show. Originally, I was a guest. I was invited to come on another show because of what we do as a company. We help, among other things, we help nonprofits raise unlimited funding. We don't charge them anything for it. But I was asked, what would you do if you did your own show? What would your pillars be? And I said two things. One, we have to be willing to evolve. If we truly want to find more success, more joy, more certainty in our lives, we have to be willing to change. We have to be willing to consider new relationships and technologies and so forth. And secondly, we have to link arms and work together. I believe we have a much more in common than we differ on. It's 95% versus 5%. And yes, we're so hyper-focused on that 5%, it causes problems. So I was asking Dave on the break what one event, if there is one, that stands out in his career. Was there a favorite? Do you mind sharing with them what you shared if they weren't watching the YouTube video?
Yeah, I will. But one of the things, like I thought for a second you were going to ask me what show that I would do, and I just want to dip into this. I always thought it would be a really cool show, and call it Confession, and just have people unload things that they're carrying around. I think, like you said, we get wrapped up in the 5%, which is like the hair and the makeup, but we forget about the heart, and oftentimes that the other person across from you is carrying around. And I think a lot of our differences come because we don't share the similarities of some of the things that we've had to endure and some of the hardships that we've had to endure that have brought us to the platforms and to the places that we are resting our morals or beaching our boats upon, and saying, this is where I stand and that's it. But I think if we get down to it, that 5% really is only the hair and makeup. The rest of it is we've all gone through really rough times. If you've lived into your 40s or your 50s, you've worn some scars. And I think a great show would be called Confession. But we were talking about that the event, or you asked what would be the best event.
Yeah, let me interject real quick on your thought. You mentioned earlier about how you were trying to find the balance, and not hard to do, right? To create a rock version of a song that is so beloved, it's historic, it's spiritual for many people, but it starts being old manner, and trying to find that balance between a different version, right? A more upbeat maybe version, a more a universal version, but a rock version of it.
Hey, it was a rock version, yeah.
but still not losing the spirit of it, right? And I listen to a lot of gospel, a lot of Christian, modern Christian music, Counting Crows and Mercy Me. I mean, the list goes on, right? But I think they do a pretty good job. And I don't know about you, but it seems like there's a lot of bands out there that are figuring that out. Before we talk about your experience with the law enforcement candlelight vigil, which I think is incredible.
Yeah, I want to tell that story.
How do you find that balance? How do you think that really great artists are doing that, yourself included? Because I think it's a challenge. It's not easy to do.
Well, I'm going to be brutally honest about what I feel about music coming out of especially the Christian community, and I get it a lot. But again, it speaks to the hair and makeup crowd. I believe that every person has their own faith, and they got their own walk with faith. We all have our own thumbprint when it comes to our relationships with God and with whoever your higher power may be, Christ for me. One of the things that I will say about Christian music that is become almost repugnant for me to listen to, in a way that I can look upon the song and I know exactly what it's about, who it's for, and why. But it feels like no artist is out there really willing to scream at the stars and say, ask the real hard questions. And that's where I feel like me as an artist, people are like, are you a country artist? I said, yeah, but I'm a God and country artist. I'm faith driven, but it's not always driven to glorify. Sometimes I'm going to be coming honest with it to the audience and say, I feel some days abandoned. I feel like there is no God today. Some days I don't want to get on my knees. Some days I'm angry, and nobody ever dips into those things. And I think that's where a lot of artists have found a ton of success because they follow the same cookie cutter, thing. We go to Nashville, we write a song about him, and we give all our glory up to God and praise, worship, and all that is great. But music, for me, was never meant to be all one thing in certain ways and certain entities that I hear on radio stations. Some days it's like, oh my gosh, okay, another song that is just the same thing over and over again.
It's all the others, right?
It's the same repugnance as country music, and if you listen down through a lot of Dave Bray songs, at first glance you may even say, well, this sounds more secular. This doesn't sound like a song about faith. And then I'll sit down and I'll say, well, have you ever felt this way? Have you ever thought about it this way? Have you ever looked at yourself in the mirror and not been content? Have you ever fought a demon or a battle that you couldn't get through, and then you realize later on that demon was placed there by God so that you could overcome it? And I don't want to say that I'm this, esoteric visionary when it comes to music. I'm not. I've been very blessed with the amount of success that I've gotten. I don't have a label. I have nobody pushing me. It's my wife, my kids, and I. But we walk a very different path than people that are signed into, Nashville record labels and things like that. It's just a very, very different vision and a very, very different experience for us than it is for a lot of others. And again, I like to camouflage some of my faith elements in my songs, is that people, they may not see it coming until the end, and they go back and they realize, they're like, holy cow, that song was literally about my journey with faith, and I can completely connect with it.
That's interesting how in order to have true impact and to truly make lasting change on people, sometimes we have to be less overt, right? You have to go a path that's not commercialized. You have to go a direction that's outside the box, right? Mm-hmm. But I think it's one of the reasons so many listeners are resonating with you and your style, because you talked about fresh, right? You talked about the kids at Liberty being, it's like a breath of fresh air. I think your music, Dave, is a breath of fresh air to the listeners. And oftentimes they don't even realize why that is, but it resonates with them at a deeper level. And maybe it takes a little while for them to recognize why that is, but I think it's because you speak truth and you're not afraid to, you're not polishing it, right? You're not trying to fit in that mainstream and work with the Hollywood producers or the Nashville producers in order to make a buck. Your message, correct me if I'm wrong, is more about the truth. It's more about the heart. It's more about the real experience that we go through and are going through here, not just Facebook's version of it. Is that a safe summation?
It's close. It's Music on a Mission for me is basically what we call our album series. So I narrate down through the records. You don't just get 10, 12 songs in a row. You get the narrated version. I tell you exactly what that song is about and why it was written. And that's one of the biggest faux pas in music. Everybody's like, no, you can't tell them what this song's about. You got to let them figure it out themselves. Nope. I don't want that. I want you to understand that I wrote this song for this reason, and this is why I wrote it. And again, people will then listen with a different set of ears and be like, holy cow, again, this guy is striking into a nerve that I carry along with me, or that into a darkness that I carry along with me. But more importantly, what I want to show with Music on a Mission is a continuation of service in patriotism and in faith. And I want to show other artists out there, other men and women of service, men and women in law enforcement who may have, put their uniforms away, that to find something else, find another mission, lay it out on the table and really plan it and plot it, and know that God is going to put his hands in it if you put your heart in the right place. And that's the purpose of my music. That's the purpose of my mission. And finally is just to be a representation that my kids can look up to and realize that, hey, my dad was in music, but he wasn't some guy sitting around, guzzling liquor and drinking and singing about whiskey and booze and Friday nights and neon lights and Daisy Dukes and dirt roads and red trucks and tailgates and that kind of thing. It's not for me. So I'm a different artist. I'm a different kind of guy. And if people want to listen, I'm more than happy to allow that. I would love that. But if it's not your cup of tea, I get it. I completely get it.
Right.
There's plenty of that out there.
Well, I normally start the show with sharing 2 reasons why I've invited this guest on Finding Certainty. And one of those is because what you're doing with your song, with your music, I think it's resonating with patriots all over America. What Republican, Democrat, if you care about the country, I think your music resonates is the word that keeps coming to me. But the second reason, though, is exactly that. It's that you are approaching the music industry and approaching the messaging in your music from a different angle than a lot of artists. And I find it refreshing myself. And the feedback I hear from others is they feel the same way. So I know your sophomore album hit number 1 on the rock and country charts, right? Or a number 1 on the rock chart, but it's resonating with artists and fans from both arenas, right? And in country. You've garnered national success across both communities and both demographics. And so Too Far Gone, right? It's the name of the album.
Name of the album's Too Far Gone. The name of the first album was called Music on a Mission. That was the freshman album for me as a solo artist. So Music on a Mission is out there. And that one, again, it had God Bless America, rock versions again of God Bless America, Amazing Grace, the Star Spangled Banner. But it also had a very important song on there called Last Call. And Last Call was written from the perspective of a fallen law enforcement officer. It was written because a friend of mine had sent me a last call that was sent as a broadcast over the airwaves that he had received a capture for. And as I was listening to it, I didn't know what it was. In the military, we have a roll call or a final roll call for our fallen brothers and sisters. But in the law enforcement community, they announce over the radio the badge number. And they announce it 3 times to blank airwaves. And the first time I heard it, the dispatcher's voice was crumbling, and I didn't know what it was. And I could feel the emotion from what she was saying, but I didn't know what was happening until the final call of that badge number, where she retired and obviously gave the end of watch sequence for a gentleman by the name of Sergeant Brad Fox, or Officer Brad Fox. And Brad was a United States Marine, and he had kids, and he got ambushed and he got killed in the line of duty. And I wanted to write a song that would fill those blank spaces after they called that badge number 3 times on the air with what I would say. And that turned into the song that we all know as Last Call. Has gone, again, certified gold. It's been streamed thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of times. The video's been, millions of video views. But that song Last Call is for that reason. And that's the one that opened up an entirely new world to me when it came to I don't want to call them fans because they're friends, the law enforcement community.
Mm-hmm. Well, we were talking before about one of the performances that you've had that really had an impact on you. And it was the National Law Enforcement Candlelight Vigil, right, in D.C. Yeah. They do it every year, May 15th. It's the, what is the exact holiday? It's
a National Peace Officers Memorial Day.
That's
it's
right.
National Peace Officers Day of Remembrance. That's the actual day. It's May 15th. Each year they'll do the reading of the names and the wreath at the Capitol. And the president is there. I've performed 3 times for 3 different presidents for the wreath laying, for the flowers and the wreath for the families of the fallen. The survivors is what they're known as. And then I've done the National Law Enforcement Memorial Fund. They do the candlelight vigil, and that's down below the Capitol. That's on the mall, the actual National Mall, and it's 20 to 50,000 people. And they all light from one candle. They fill the entire National Mall with candles. And if you've never seen it, if you've never been to D.C. for Police Week, if you've never witnessed that event, it is one that will shake you. It will stir you. It will make you realize what these men and women do every single day and the price that they pay. But as from a performer standpoint, it is by far the most memorable, but also the most important stage that I've ever performed. And
I can imagine. Maybe
talk after the break about that. I don't know how much time we have, but I'd like to talk more about that if we could.
Yeah, we're coming up on the break. I spent quite a bit of time in D.C. My parents lived in Silver Spring, Maryland for about a decade. I'd like to tell you a quick Pennsylvania story real quick before our break. And then when we come back, let's talk more about this event. For years, I'd been going back and visiting my parents. And I said, Mom, one of these days I'd like to drive up into Pennsylvania and go see Gettysburg. And she said, well, it's about an hour from here.
Yeah.
I had no idea it was that close. I mean, living there in the Beltway, and I didn't live there. I just came and visited while they were living there. I was already an adult, but how close everything was, and how many historical landmarks, battlefields, etc., that surround that area. It was really cool, but shows my ignorance as a young man.
Gettysburg's great, man.
Everything's so close, right?
They do a great Segway tour up in Gettysburg. If you ever done it, it's all, automated Segway tour. It's really cool. You should do it. So if anybody's thinking about it, don't forget the Segway tour.
Yeah, it was really neat. There is a spirit there at Gettysburg and many of the historical monuments and so forth. You can feel the spirit of the dead. You can feel the spirit of the significance of that location, right, of those landmarks. And I'm sure it was the same way at that conference. But we are up against our next and last break. We're visiting with Dave Bray here on Finding Certainty. We'll come back. I'd like to hear a little bit more about the Candlelight Vigil and how you felt, what you're doing for law enforcement in general, maybe what we can do to help listeners out there. It's an important topic. We will be right back.
Voice America is on LinkedIn. Connect with us today.
If you're a nonprofit in need of funding, we can help. Certainty Management is a cost reduction firm that also helps churches, schools, sports teams, and other nonprofits raise unlimited zero-cost funding. Best of all, you don't have to sell anything or ask for donations. Call 888-684-3122 to learn more today. That's 888-684-3122. Visit us on the web at CertaintyTeam.com. That's Certainty, TEAM, like Mary.com.
Have you become a member yet? Sign up now to become a member of Voice America. It's always free and easy. Plus, you get to take advantage of some great member benefits. Get unlimited access to millions of hours of on-demand content across all of our channels. Keep track of your favorite episodes, shows, and hosts in your own customizable library. Find out what shows you might be interested in based on your favorites. Plus, you get insider access with our newsletter. Membership gives you more. Sign up at voiceamerica.com and click register at the top right.
Certainty Management can help create more certainty in your life with our deep discount health insurance options, even for 1099s, part-time employees, volunteers, and more. Pay less to protect yourself, your loved ones, and your team. Call 888-684-3122 for a free quote today. That's 888-684-3122. Visit us on the web at CertaintyTeam.com. That's Certainty, T-E-A-M, like Mary.com.
When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network.
You are listening to Finding Certainty with Patrick Laing. Have a question for Patrick or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show with Patrick.
Welcome back to Finding Certainty. Having a great conversation today with Dave Bray. He's a very popular musician, I think in part because he covers several genres. He's performed with multiple different acts, ranging from Leonard Skinner and Charlie Daniels Band to Weezer, and the list goes on, right? As we talked though about the experience of performing both with acts like these and as a solo artist, you've performed at a number of different arenas and a number of different locations, ranging from NASCAR to NFL to, as we were just discussing, the National Law Enforcement Candlelight Vigil. Mm-hmm. I asked you earlier what was one that stands out in your mind, and unequivocally you said this experience. Absolutely. The chance to perform on the Washington Mall with as many as 50,000 friends, as you call them. They're in support of our law enforcement. You talked a little bit about the candles and how it impacted you, because you had a different perspective, right? You were standing up on the stage, looking out over the audience.
Yeah, and that's
share a little bit about that. I thought it was really interesting.
Sure. When you're there and you're in the audience, because I've been in both. I've been at the Candlelight Vigil on, holding the candle side. And then I've performed at the Candlelight Vigil for the National Law Enforcement Memorial Fund for the last 3 years. Mm-hmm. And, when you're on that stage and you're looking across, they start one candle, and it's the survivor's candle, and it goes out into all these people, and it takes a matter of maybe 5 minutes for this candle of healing to be passed through 50,000 people. And when you're up there performing, it's unbelievable, because each candle makes two, and each two makes four. You know what I mean? As you see it sort of just making its way back through the back of the National Mall. What happens is as you're standing on the stage, you're looking down and you're seeing the candles be lit. And then as you look back, they sort of flatten out, and it becomes this one single line of fire. And because of the heat signature of the candles, it starts to move, and it actually looks like a body of water. It almost looks like a lake of fire when you're standing out there. So as I'm performing the song Last Call, for these men and women and who have lost their loved ones in the line of duty and otherwise, I'm performing this song, which is this extremely heartfelt, cathartic song about fallen law enforcement. And I'm performing this, and I'm in awe of this band of fire that's going across the National Mall in front of the Capitol. And it's so hard to focus, because it's something that I've never seen before in my life. It would be like watching a quadruple rainbow while trying to juggle something into the sky. Wow. And, the best way I can describe it, but all of a sudden I snapped back into the reality when I started coming back forward and bringing my gaze down below to the front row of these people, these survivors. And behind each candle, the thing that I didn't see, because I could only see candles this at night, there was a glow of a face behind each and every candle. And in these faces, you could feel the pain and the heartache just being released during this moment. And there is probably no way that will ever be beaten in the performance realm for me. As a band, as a performer, I've played in front of thousands of screaming people and jumping around and stage diving and all those things. But to see that many people having the same cathartic emotional reaction to a song that you're singing at one time, and for the purpose it was for, it will never, ever be touched.
I appreciate you sharing that with me. We talk about a spiritual experience when you're in Washington, D.C., around the monuments at Arlington and cemetery and so forth. But I think, if I may be so bold as to say, I think the catharsis of it all and the spirit of it all has got to be further accentuated because of the emotion. And you say they're going through a grieving experience. They're either grieving being a survivor or grieving having lost a loved one. We're both veterans. I served for several years in the Army, and it's hard to encapsulate. It's hard to verbalize the experience of serving with someone and then losing them, and going through the I guess you say the regret of being a survivor, right?
Survivor's guilt's real, and that's part of that event. Is that there's roughly, in the last 5 or 10 years, there's been roughly 200 law enforcement officers who are killed in line of duty or perished that year, and so there's families that are in the front are the families, and I'm speaking again of the Candlelight Vigil, the National Law Enforcement Memorial puts on. Those families are 200 people's direct family members, and they're the ones who, it's their first year, they're suffering the worst, or this is their first year actually seeing the vigil, and the other 50,000 are there to support those 200 families. And that, again, is something that is happening on such an amazing scale within this law enforcement community. And I'm going to kind of keep going here for a second. An amazing part of that support and getting those people there from all over the country comes from an organization called Concerns of Police Survivors, or COPS. And they do so much in engaging these families and supporting them from the moment they get their notification and until their kids are up and out of the house. They're just that amazing, benevolent organization that wraps a blanket around these families and helps them grieve through the process without the bureaucracy of what's happening on paper. They just allow that human connection to happen. And one last organization I want to mention behind the Border Patrol is the Border Patrol Foundation, and they are another benevolent organization specifically for Border Patrol. So I got to give those three organizations the shout outs: the National Law Enforcement Memorial, the Concerns of Police Survivors, and of course the Border Patrol Foundation, for all they do for those families who have fallen directly after and continuing through the lives of their children. It's absolutely amazing.
100%. I have to tell you, one of my favorite things about having this show, and you would be a good host. It's such a great platform to be able to get the message out and control the message and highlight worthwhile organizations, artists, activists, and so forth. And it's probably my favorite thing about what we're doing is that it does feel like we have a bigger loudspeaker, right? A bigger mouthpiece. When I was asked to do the show, and as I embarked upon this experience, I wasn't quite sure what to expect, but it's become a really great platform for us to get the word out that we have not only the opportunity but the obligation to help where we can. Speaking of law enforcement, I think that one of the biggest travesties in our country is those that are trying to defund the police and tear it down. And they're out there defending us on a daily basis, undergoing untold dangers. And I know I have a friend who's a police officer in Anchorage, Alaska. It's not even the biggest city, but he said every single night it is call after call after call after call. A lot of domestic issues, a lot of drunken, disorderly, and so forth. It's not always something major like a murder or something, but still, I think we have, as citizens, we have an obligation to understand and appreciate it. But most of us we have no comprehension of how much they do and are doing day in, day out. You talked about earlier about military versus the law enforcement. Military in Afghanistan, you might be going out on multiple operations a day, but in law enforcement, it's nonstop.
Every
right?
day. You don't come home after 9 months. Law enforcement get to come home after 9 months. Yeah. But I mean, listen, the name of the show, and the certainty behind it and that quest for it, it comes down to some, in my opinion, we were going to talk about this and I wanted to make sure I got to it. But it comes down to the building blocks. And I think when you talk about certainty is completely uncertain. There's never anything certain about your human existence or your time here, your human experience. But if you can get building blocks, placed properly, and you can build a foundation around yourself and your life, and you can start to build that foundation by keeping it square, by keeping it plumb, and keeping it true. You can build certainty, with faith and through the right virtues like respect. And things like that. And if we have a common building block that is put into the hearts and minds of our children, and the men and women of this country that we all can understand and come to commonsensical terms upon, like, hey, yes, you have the right to express your own faith and do your own faith within the parameters of the law. And I will respect your willingness to do that. If you respect mine, then we can put those two blocks together and we can start building. I respect your right to free speech. I may not agree, but I'm going to allow you to have it. There's another building block. If we have another building block of going on top, that is around patriotism, or where we see our flag or one of those things, or how we respect our law enforcement, there is another building block. Same with our military. And again, I feel like if we can build these building blocks, plumb, square, and true, then we can have more certainty as a nation. But right now, the way I see it, our building blocks have been crumbled, and there's a plan and a plot to destroy us. And I feel like we are a far cry away from the certainty that we truly need to move forward in this country. And I hope that people will revisit some of the virtues that built this nation so that we can continue to move forward.
I agree with you 100%, Dave. And I don't know that the building blocks have been crumbled as much as they've been pushed aside. They're still there. They're still available, and to your point, if we just start putting them back together, start sliding them back into place, start rebuilding them if we have to. In a very real sense, I think one of the most important things we can do is to choose to think for ourselves, to be independent. You talk about the defiance of the founding fathers and what established America, and we see the monuments to their defiance, right? We have to be willing to defy the masses, right? To defy the crowd, to think, to be willing to think differently. And we are out of time. We're coming up at the end of the show, but I believe that's what you do with your music, right? You're defying Nashville and the producers and the general mainstream music, right? You're defying that cookie cutter thinking. You're defying.
But my mission, my mission,
that thought process, right?
But my mission in the end is to bring people together. And if we continue to say, hey, we have to continue to defy each other, then we fail in one of God's biggest laws. He wants us to love one another for what we are and who we are. And at the end of the day, if we continue to just beat our heads up against the wall about our differences, we're never going to get anywhere. So
100%. Well, congrats on all your success. How do people get a hold of you?
Everything is at Dave Bray USA, Dave Bray, Bray USA. You can find the music, the mission. You can sign up for the newsletter. I do a Freedom Friday newsletter on the website. If you want to support merchandise, is Dave Bray USA. My wife, my kids, myself, we print and do all our own merchandise. So you're supporting our family as well. DaveBrayUSA.com there. And for every purchase, if they mention they saw me on this show, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sign an autograph my Music on a Mission album. You're going to get that for free. Don't bother buying it. If you say in the comments that you saw me on your show, then I want to give you that album for free because I think it's important.
Fantastic. Let's talk more. We can help raise funding for your organizations that you care about. We're out of time.
Sure.
Thanks for being on the show, Dave. Really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you so much, Patrick. I appreciate you as well.
Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you next week.
God bless.
Thanks for tuning into today's episode of Finding Certainty. We hope you've gained some more insight into how to create more certainty in your own business or nonprofit. Join us next week for another taste of the Certainty Experience. Until then, we wish you greater certainty in all that you do.